Hey everyone, it's the Locked On Steelers podcast. This is a live stream. We're doing this live here on Thursday, reacting to the big news of TJ Watt's contract extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers, what it means, what are the numbers, how does it all play into things, is it the right move? Get that all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to this special live edition of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. Ladies and gentlemen, Omar Khan knows how to mess up everything in my schedule. I promise you, I literally just did a Friday episode. It was up. It was ready to go. I had everything. We had nice, cool talking points. Throw all that out because TJ Watt has signed a massive, and I mean massive, contract extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Omar Khan getting it done in crunch time just before Steelers training camp. Literally, Steelers report to camp next Wednesday. So huge move for the Steelers to keep their number one guy. Now, this has been a talking point, and I mean a major talking point for Steelers fans for months because this is the last year of TJ Watt's current contract. He was making about $30 million a year. Myles Garrett got a contract that paid him $40 million a year, resetting the market for what edge rushers are going to be paid. And so many Steelers fans have been saying, Chris, is that too much money? That sounds a lot. $40 million. Quarterbacks used to make that kind of money. Quarterbacks still kind of make that kind of money. What are we doing here? Bottom line is, as we've said here on the Locked On Steelers podcast for months, this was always going to be done. I kept telling people, you're worrying about it right now because it's not signed on the dotted line. You don't have everything lined up right in front of you. But TJ Watt was always going to get this deal once the Steelers had everything locked in. Pretty sure the Steelers have had an offer out to TJ Watt. There were some things here and there they had to make sure of, but TJ Watt locked it down and was going to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was always the plan. We talked to his teammates, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig. He posted a picture with Nick Herbig earlier today, and we talked to Denzel Martin, his position coach. Everyone said the same thing. They expect TJ Watt to be a Steeler, and not only will he be a Steeler, he'll be showing up to training camp with a deal in hand, no questions asked. So, what does this mean? Well, let's get all the details for this contract first, because that's the really big thing here, right? Is trying to see, okay, how much exactly did TJ Watt get paid? It's a 3-year extension. What does that mean? It means it goes on top of this current year, which was the last year of his contract. So now he is under the Steelers salary cap for the next 4 total seasons, 3 on top of this current season. He is going to be making $123 million off in new money on those next three years. That is going to be a big part of what the Steelers have been looking at. But the bottom line to this is it's a $41 million a year contract. That is how much money TJ Watt is going to make on average on the new 3 years of his deal. And it's also $108 million in guaranteed money. That's a big part of this too, is the guaranteed money. We'll get more into that in a bit. But for those who are sitting there wondering, $41 million, that's a lot of money, Chris. Not in today's NFL salary cap. And I'm going to keep hammering this home. I'm not trying to break my desk as I literally hammer this home for the millionth time on this podcast. But $41 million is less of today's salary cap than it was when TJ Watt signed for an average $28.5 million per year when he signed his last contract extension with the Steelers back in 2021. It is less of the salary cap now, $41 million is, than $28.5 million was back in 2021. That is how much money the NFL has been making to expand their salary cap so that the numbers that you thought what a position should be paid is broken. They're not what you thought they should be anymore. This is now going to be the number that edge rushers, top tier edge rushers, are paid for. I also think it's huge for the Steelers that they get this in before anything happens with Micah Parsons, because if something happens there, maybe that resets the market again. But now, Omar Khan, you don't have to worry worry about it. You don't have to ask questions about it. Right now, the Steelers have their guy, TJ Watt, locked in, ready to go moving forward. And I think this is huge because nothing happens with this team without TJ Watt. Nothing. This team has a lot of other moving parts to it. Aaron Rodgers, that's exciting. The offensive line could develop this year. They have other good players on defense. They just added Jalen Ramsey. But TJ Watt is still the centerpiece of this team. And without TJ Watt, they're going to have to find so many different ways to win. That's why it was never really in the equation for the Steelers to trade him, let him go. That's why every time that was brought up, I said that this was not, there was no question he was not getting traded. Stop asking, oh, is it going to be 2 first-round picks in a second? That's why we kept saying on the Locked On Steelers podcast, this was never happening. If you've been watching us, you've been listening to us, it's what it's always going to be. And and again, I think there's a lot of Steelers fans who are right here on this live stream right now. Shout out to everyone who's here with me saying, hey, he earned it. This is money deserved by TJ Watt. This isn't Omar Khan handing out for past work. This guy is still one of, if not the best edge rusher in the NFL, one of still the best defensive players in the NFL. I just did a show yesterday talking about why since he's been in the league, he has the most sacks, the most tackles for loss, the most forced fumbles, the most pressures, the most quarterback hits of any player in the NFL since he's entered the league. And he did the same year as Myles Garrett. He also has in that time the most interceptions and passes defense of any edge rusher in the NFL, any defensive lineman in the NFL. You would put him in that category, take away defensive backs. He's got the most. He is that guy, and he still is that guy. The question people thought, well, he had 11 and a half sacks last season. Yep. You know what? Teams made him the most blocked and chipped player in the NFL last year. And again, KD breakpoint. This got ahead of the Micah Parsons deal. Shout out to everyone who's contributing in the chat. I'll try to get to all your questions there because that's a big part of this. But to me, this deal was always going to happen. He is a Steeler through and through. He's an all-time Steeler. He's one of the best players in the league. You don't let those guys go out into the market. You don't trade away those guys when they're locker room guys, when they're leaders, and they're still projected to be the best potential player on the defensive side of the ball in the NFL. Now, again, I think that TJ Watt is. I see some people saying, "Hey, I'm not excited about this because he has to make his money." But I think TJ Watt is going to. I don't see a sign to me that TJ Watt is depreciably worse than he had been the last few years. I think towards the end of last season, he dealt with an injury and things happened. And he said, and teams double teamed him and chipped him a lot more than anyone else in the NFL. Even PFF verified that with their new chip stats that they involved in the NFL last season. And I think that led to the Steelers saying, hey, we got to rethink how we do things. We need to reinvest in the defensive line. That's why they drafted Derek Harmon. That's why they drafted Y.A. Black. That's why they say Dana Quale. And that's why I think what they're going to be doing is moving TJ Watt around a lot more. And they're going to try to stop the run more so they can be more aggressive with their pass rushes. But this all plays into the grand plan that the Steelers have been putting in place, and that's TJ Watt was going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler with this newest contract extension. And again, $41 million a year is not what you think. This is not going to be something that bankrupts the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're still in position to make other moves off of that. In fact, as I was saying just on yesterday's episode, I would expect this contract extension to actually open up money in this upcoming year and give the Steelers some more wiggle room to maybe go sign that Julian Blackmon or Justin Simmons, get that extra safeties that they could replenish their roster with since they lost Minkah Fitzpatrick in the trade. Or maybe that's some of the money that they spend to go get wide receiver 2 or that swing tackle. But money is coming in, and TJ Watt being part of this deal is a huge step for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a must thing, a must situation that needed to happen for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I got to talk more about this deal and what it means for the defense, what they have to do to be better with TJ Watt this year, and why I still think he is going to be a premier player in the NFL. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. Still got a lot to discuss. But first, I remind you that this show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Monarch Money is the place you need to go when you need to manage your money, because Monarch Money is going to show you everything in your toolbox ready and available to go so that you know where all your money is getting paid. If you're like me, you probably have a lot of subscriptions right now. You have subscriptions to things online. You probably place a lot of online orders, things to get delivered. And that when you do that over time, it stacks up to be a lot of money. But Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's an app that's going to bring you a financial command center so you can see all your expenses, going out in a convenient, well-organized, convenient presentation that's easy to see on their app, on their website, that you can see with Monarch Money, so you can know how much money you're taking in, how much money you're spending out, and to balance it at all times with Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year only at Monarch Money. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue with our show here today. Now we continue to address the TJ Watt extension. Again, a 3-year extension worth $123 million in new money, basically $41 million a year, just ahead of Myles Garrett's contract. And again, some Steelers fans are very excited, saying, Myles who? I think, again, this was a must-have move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you go back in the past several years, the Steelers have made the playoffs 4 out of the last 5 seasons. Yes, they haven't won a playoff game during that span, but they have been a good enough team to be above average in the NFL, because above average is where you need to make the playoffs in the NFL. But they've been consistently slightly above average or just moderately above average. But a big part of that is because TJ Watt has been dragging this team there with his expertise. He has been that guy. And if you want to be a team that is competitive, as soon as you get the supposed franchise quarterback that you're hoping to get in this upcoming NFL draft, you need to have your roster ready as soon as that quarterback gets there. And this roster would not be ready if TJ Watt was not on it. And that is a big reason why I think TJ Watt was always going to get this deal, because the Steelers knew they needed to have some stars still on this team. Yes, they're moving things around. George Pickens is out. Guys like that are, Najee Harris is out. Minka Fitzpatrick's out. But TJ Watt is the pillar, the center to the defense that makes everything go. Cam Hayward's a huge part of it. That's why they re-signed him last year. They made sure that got done. But the Steelers were not letting this guy go because he is a huge part of their run defense and their pass rush, and he is something that offenses have to spend so much time preparing for that he becomes the focal point. And if the Steelers can get strong in some other areas, it will then highlight just how good TJ Watt is yet again, because they won't have as much time to prepare for him. Or if they do spend that much time preparing for him, it will open up so many more opportunities for the Patrick Queens, the Peyton Wilsons, the Jalen Ramseys, the Joey Porters, the Deshaun Elliott's, the Cam Haywards, the Derek Harmons, because if you're an offense, you cannot spend every waking second on one guy. And I think that there were times in the past few years you've seen TJ Watt where teams have done that. They've said, you know what, we're going to dedicate 3 guys on a lot of plays. Go back to the Rams game 2 years ago where they came back in Los Angeles and won that game. And they showed, I think there were some of the NFL highlights. They showed Sean McVay in the first half talking about, we got to isolate 90. We cannot let him impact us. And then he's like, good. We know where he is. And then the first defensive series of the second half, TJ Watt lines up as an off-ball linebacker, and he's like, wait a minute. And they showed a clip, Sean saying, wait a minute, where's 90? He's not where he's supposed to be. Stop. Sure enough, Matt Stafford gets the ball, throws a pass, it's intercepted by TJ Watt. And he's like, he got us again. That's how good TJ Watt is. He's not just a physical freak that's going to wear off over time. He's a technical freak. He's learned how to master different techniques to try to beat you with different moves over his career, and how to line up in the right spots and anticipate the right things. This man is a student of the game. He knows what he's doing, and that's why the Steelers are keeping him for the long term. So again, this money, not as big as some people make it out to be, because the salary cap now makes this just under 15% of what the Steelers salary cap is. And again, the Steelers aren't paying for a franchise quarterback right now. Aaron Rodgers is a $14 million cap hit. Presumably they draft a quarterback next year. That guy's going to be on a rookie contract for the next 5 years, presumably, unless he, gets traded or, retires or is a bust or whatever. But even if you do land the quarterback of your future, let's say Lenore Sellers or Arch Manning or Derek Nussmeier, one of those guys becomes a superstar quarterback next year, you don't got to pay that guy for 5 seasons, which means TJ Watt contract by that time will be gone. And so then you won't have to worry about this. TJ Watt is a huge part of keeping this team competitive right now. That's the big thing that I think that needs to be looked at here. And I also think, this is an interesting point here. Danny Littlejohn. Steelers are going to get a more energetic version of TJ Watt. I think that is really interesting. And there's a lot of people saying a lot of things. He deserved to get paid. This is coming from Quentin Eric Bullard watching here. Thank you for everyone who's here with me on our live stream here of the Locked On Steelers podcast on YouTube. Saying he's a healthy, motivated, and well-compensated TJ Watt, and what that does for the next few years, Defensive Player of the Year. I do think TJ Watt is going to be in that conversation, Defensive Player of the Year. TJ Watt does not take being dissed lightly. We've seen that in the past when he felt he wasn't given his respects in 2020. I think in 2020 it was, and in 2021 he had 22 and a half sacks, tying Michael Strahan's record and becoming Defensive Player of the Year. I literally do think TJ Watt is going to be in that kind of a conversation when we're talking about the best defensive players in the NFL. He's still going to be that guy right up there in the top 5 conversation. The Locked On Podcast Network rated him as the 4th best defender behind Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and Patrick Surtain. And again, you ask me, he's definitely above Myles Garrett, above Micah Parsons. I think Micah Parsons' future is brighter because he's younger, and naturally, he'll just be in a game a lot longer. And I do think you could say some things with Patrick Surtain, cornerback-wise, different positions and what you ask of them. But TJ Watt, to me, is the most dominant player at the line of scrimmage in the NFL right now. When he lines up, you have to know where he is at all times. And again, since he's been in the league, most sacks, most tackles for loss, most forced fumbles, most quarterback hits and quarterback pressures, according to Pro Football Reference. And it'll be interesting to see where things go. San Antonio Hotspur says 20-plus sack season incoming. That would be very interesting, right? If he gets that kind of pressure. Let me give you a behind the curtains peek here at the Locked On Steelers podcast. Again, if you're just getting here and you missed the early part of the show, I literally just finished a full episode. By the way, this will count as the full Friday episode. I'm still technically on vacation because I just got married last week. But I had just finished the full Friday episode that I was going to air at midnight tonight for you all to enjoy tomorrow. This is now that episode because I decided to just go live to talk about this right away. But what I think is really interesting when we're talking about this, when I went back and I was talking about in that Friday episode, I was just talking about how, like, man, this defense needs to get back to being Blitzburg. And shout out to one of our callers that asked the question about this. But I think a huge part of what this Steelers team needs to get back to being is being a team. They set the tone up front by getting after you, by sending the heat. Last year, the Steelers brought heat about 25.9% of the time. That's not a very low rate. In fact, it was in the upper half of the NFL, maybe ranked around like 13th or 14th among teams' blitz rates. But as a percentage rate, it is vastly lower than what they had when Keith Butler was their defensive coordinator. Again, showing the different styles between coordinators. Terrell Austin, more coverage-based. He's more looking to try to make sure that things are complex with his secondary, with his safeties. That's why Minkah Fitzpatrick was such a focal point of the Steelers' defense the past several years. But with Keith Butler, they wanted to throw heat at you from all sides. They didn't have great guys in the secondary until 2019 and 2020 when Fitzpatrick, Hayden, and Nelson were a crew with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But for most of the time with Keith Butler, what he did with the Steelers, he would bring heat from the left side, the right side, inside, the outside. He would come with heat everywhere. And in fact, in 2020, we talked about that 25.9% blitz rate in 2024. In 2020 with Keith Butler, it was 40.6%. And that still wasn't the highest in the NFL. I think it was 3rd that year. But the bottom line is there's a vast difference in how the Steelers have played. And I think the Steelers right now, when you see them trade away Minkah Fitzpatrick to get Jalen Ramsey, all this ties into me is that they want to be that dominant team up front, not just stuff in the run, but getting after you at the quarterback position. They want to rush the passer. They went and got Jalen Ramsey, switching out Minkah Fitzpatrick for all the things that he did. Great safety, awesome player. I think he should be in the Steelers Hall of Honor when he's done. Not Hall of Fame. That's a whole different story. We'll get to that another day. But I think he should be in the Steelers Hall of Honor because he's a multi-all-pro player for the team. I still think one of the best safeties that have ever played the position for the organization. But where Minkah Fitzpatrick was making his plays with 20 yards off the ball, that is something that's more easily avoidable when you're a team like most teams play the Pittsburgh Steelers now because of TJ Watt saying, we're going to get the ball out quick, 5-yard slants, quick pass here, quick concept there, quick concept there. Point is get the ball out fast and triple team TJ Watt so that he can't get to us and none of his teammates can get to us because he's got good partners up front. And I think that, again, plays into why the Steelers traded for Jalen Ramsey and why the TJ Watt deal was always going to happen because they wanted to make that the strong point of this team that is able to beat most offenses. I do think that there are a lot of things that are still coming. I still think that Omar Khan makes a move for a wide receiver 2 at some point. Whether it's a high-end wide receiver 2 or a low-end wide receiver 2, I think still depends on how Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson look when they show up next week in camp and we start to get sense of these guys and the pads go on. I still think that this team might go get a swing tackle. I still think this team might go get a free safety to pair with that defense. But again, all of this does not happen without TJ Watt. We'll get more to that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. I'll be right back. We just got to do a quick break here for our ads. We'll be right back. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here, our emergency episode that is now also officially our Friday episode for the Locked On Steelers podcast, reacting to TJ Watt's contract extension. I've been talking really fast because there's a lot of points that I want to get to here because, again, I just did a whole show and I just had to scrap basically everything that I just talked about because of what we addressed here. But this Steelers team, I still think is not in the Super Bowl window right now. I think this is a year where you can expect the Steelers team to not just make the playoffs, but to be more dangerous in the early parts of the playoffs. I think their ceiling right now, especially now that TJ Watt we know is still in the fold. And again, if you were watching the Locked On Steelers podcast, I said for months, he was going to sign his contract. It's not that big a deal. I don't think these two sides are as far as away apart as some people make them out to be. And now we see they weren't. But I think that this Steelers team with TJ Watt and with Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and all the things they've added to this team, Jalen Ramsey, I think that they can be a team that makes the AFC Championship game if a lot of things go right. Again, a lot of dominoes have to fall to get there. I'm not saying that they definitely are getting there. I'm not calling my shot and saying, oh, they're definitely an AFC Championship team. But I do think that there is a chance for this Steelers team to get hot this year. Again, the biggest storyline for this team this year, if you want to see success, is not necessarily Aaron Rodgers or DK Metcalf or even Jalen Ramsey. It's the offensive line. The offensive line has been the primary focus of investments when it comes to draft picks and trying to develop players. If the offensive line develops this year into an above average unit, doesn't have to even be elite, just above average, just a good, consistently good offensive line that wins against most opponents. If it does that and the run game comes with it and the pass protection comes with it and Aaron Rodgers doesn't feel under siege, you're going to see a better offense of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And one thing that TJ Watt has really not seen much of for most of his career is a good offense to pair with him. The last time you saw TJ Watt really have a good offense to pair with him was the 2020 season, in the early part of the season when TJ Watt got to play alongside an offense that was on fire that year. If you remember how good the Steelers were when it came to scoring points in the early part of that year with a rejuvenated Ben Roethlisberger before his knees went at the end of that season. That's the last time he's played with a good offense. Last year was a middle of the road offense. And even with that early in the year, I thought he was eaten very, very well until teams started to adjust to him and also adjust to the Steelers offense. But I do think that there is a future this year where the offense takes a step forward as long as the offensive line plays better. Aaron Rodgers can still be the cerebral quarterback that gets the ball out on time to the right players. I think DK Metcalf can be a more professional and more polished wide receiver than George Pickens. I think that Calvin Austin can be a better version of himself. We'll get to see Roman Wilson for the first time. Really, we'll see a double tight end package and sometimes triple tight end package with Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, and Darnell Washington as a third option. I think that could be very unique. And then, of course, Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren as a 1-2 punch. That offense can work something there. And while that offense is working something and being better than what we've really seen as a Steelers offense, I anticipate since the 2020 season, maybe even the 2018, 2017 seasons, you're going to see a defense that I think is more locked on, if you will. Sorry for the pun. But someone can Yoshi bonk me. But you're going to see a defense that's more locked on to trying to be the identity that is going to make them their best strength. And right now, I think that is press the line of scrimmage, stuff the run, force them in second and longs, third and longs, get back to being Blitzburgh, which was going to be the title of this episode when I recorded it the first time. But get back to being Blitzburgh, where you send heat from all sides and you're confusing offensive lines more often. When you're doing all of those things all at the same time, you're going to see TJ Watt kind of get lost in the shuffle for offenses. They're not going to know where they're going to be so busy worrying about, wait a minute, is Patrick Queen blitzing up a gap again? Or wait, are they sending a corner blitz again? Oh, wait, we forgot about TJ Watt. That's what the Steelers have to get back to doing, is to try to mix things up. But again, to get to that part, of the conversation where you're mixing things up, because it's not that Terrell Austin doesn't want to mix things up, but they have to be able to stuff the run, because those exotic blitzes, those crazy heats from different areas, they only come with being able to stuff the run. That's why back in the 2000s, when Dick LeBeau returned back to the Steelers, Casey Hampton was such an important part of that defense, as was Aaron Smith, as was Kimo von Oelhoffen, as were a lot of those defensive linemen from that era, because they were stuffing the run so much and keeping the linebackers clean that it was setting up more 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, 3rd and 10s. And when you have those 3rd and long situations, then the defensive coordinator can say, all right, let's dial up a blitz here because we can afford to be more aggressive, because if they throw a quick pass and it gets 3-4 yards, doesn't hurt us, they still have to punt. But if you're 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, you're opening yourselves up to being able to get hit with those quick passes, those counter plays, or the draw plays that kind of set it up so that teams a blitzing team can over pursue and open up an opportunity to get a first down there. And that's where it all comes back into play. But to me, everything that the Steelers have been doing has been focused on one, draft-wise, setting themselves up to go get that quarterback next year in the NFL draft, making sure that is part of the plan, and getting your Arch Manning, Lenore Sellers, Garrett Nussmeier, whoever you think is the quarterback of the future that's in the NFL draft next year. They're making a plan on that. But I think that they want to be a better version of what they're best at this year. And that's what TJ Watt's signing ultimately means. They are not abandoning who they have been. And anyone who thinks they should have, well, if you think they should have, you're not going to see it happen for some time, because Cam Hayward's under contract for big money and TJ Watt's under contract for big money. And those two guys are the heart and soul of the defense. And I think it even shows you that Minkah Fitzpatrick, for as important as he was in the back of the secondary, he was a pillar, but he was not the heart and soul. He was a leader. He was a captain. He was a huge part. But everything that the Steelers did, it's still the most important part is up front, and what they're able to do up front to stuff the run, confuse offensive lines, get after the quarterback. All those things, in my opinion, are being kind of amplified by the Steelers' recent moves. Getting Jalen Ramsey gets you a guy that's going to force quarterbacks to hold on to the ball longer. Instead of getting a safety who's 20 yards off the ball, you have a cornerback who's 5 yards off the ball, 3 yards off the ball, pressing the wide receivers. Now, wide receivers are going to be pressed a little bit more. Quarterbacks are going to have to hold on to the ball a little bit more. And when quarterbacks have to hold on to the ball a little bit more, guess what has to happen there? The pass rush gets more time to get to you. And that kind of ruins what teams are trying to do to neutralize TJ Watt. It is a grand plan that a lot of offenses have put into to get around TJ Watt. And I think what the Steelers have been doing with this past offseason defensively has adjusting to that and saying, okay, we see your plan to get the quick pass out. We see your plan to try to run to negate TJ Watt's abilities on the passing downs. Now we're going to reinvest in the defensive line. Now we're going to get a better cornerback and trade off our safeties. That, you know what, take that deep shot. We're going to trust that you won't even get a chance to really get those deep balls off anymore, because you won't get those quick passes off. And that means if you're holding on to the ball and waiting for that deep ball, TJ Watt's coming, Alex Highsmith's coming, Cam Hayward's coming, and eventually Derek Harmon will be coming. I think all those things play into why this move was always going to happen. This was the plan. I think Omar Khan did this the right way. You could say maybe he should have done it a few months ago, and maybe he would have gotten it ahead of the Myles Garrett deal. But ultimately, I don't think this $41 million a year is going to crush the Pittsburgh Steelers at any point, unless TJ Watt suffers a major injury, and you pray that doesn't happen. And, with any player that you get. But bottom line is, Omar Khan did the right thing. The Steelers did the right thing. TJ Watt got paid, and got paid at a rate that I think is very much on par with what his position demands in today's salary cap world of the NFL. Thank you, everyone, for joining me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Appreciate all of you for joining me here on this live edition of the show. I'm going to try to put this out in the audio format for the morning, but this will be our Friday episode. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in here for the Locked On Steelers podcast. Remember, I'm your host, Chris Carter. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you find me, social medias. I'm at Carter Critiques at that place. You can also read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. You can also check me out here every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of those daily Monday through Friday episodes. Back here Monday with more on the Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.